So you're an Air Force vet. Is that what you did?
Yes. Yeah.
You're flying. I'm trying to recall C-130s. Is that what you said
Nope.
once? Or?
Remember coming into the room?
Ah, no, I don't.
Okay, I don't know if I told this story to you guys, but I came here and they stuck me in this room, and the room is 141.
Oh,
That airplane over there is the airplane I used to fly, the C-141.
wow.
Yeah, so when I got here, so I was like, whoa, this is really cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah. So I'm gonna ask some questions about government spending on both defense spending and veterans affairs. So currently, right now, U.S. federal government spends a little over $600 billion on both defense spending and veterans affairs, and that is about 24% of the U.S. federal budget, which is uh, completely overshadows any other thing that's in the budget. Do you think that that is a necessary expenditure by the government, or could we allocate those funds better elsewhere?
I think we could probably look at different programs for the military and definitely take some of that money and use it elsewhere. There's lots of places that our government could take that money and make it better for society.
So with that, okay, so we can allocate funds elsewhere then. Okay, and then with that $600+ billion we spend, do you think we get what we pay for out of that?
How do you mean? Do we get what we pay for?
So, for instance, I was talking to my brother, who's currently a captain in the military, and he was saying that a lot of what we do currently, he thinks is some of the defense spending is somewhat frivolous, and we don't actually get what we pay for as far as like getting the proper training for troops. Like what we invest that $600 billion in, are we getting enough out of that as taxpayers?
Well, I would say the bottom line, you want to make sure you hold the government, whatever part of it is, accountable for every dime that goes into it. Whether it's the government, whether it's individuals like me, in terms of what we're doing, you want to make sure that that money is being well used. Now, with that said, the U.S. can't be the world's policeman forever and ever and ever, and that's where we're still at. We need to have support of other countries so that $600 billion doesn't have to go off in places of nothingness, and I feel that's what happened for a period of about 10 or 11 years over in the Mideast.
Okay.
It was not that was not a well thought out plan at all.
And along those lines, I don't know if you recall Eisenhower's speech when he left office, and he warned against companies or corporations, defense corporations that had a stranglehold on the government as far as relying on the government to fuel their industry. Do you think that corporations possibly have a little too much power over our spending?
Absolutely, and some of that corporate power. Well, it comes from government because the corporations buy the government's support now, and they go hand in hand with a lot of the legislators. And unfortunately, some of our laws have gone further in that direction, like a corporation being treated like a person right now. So they have protection, but they don't have any of the disadvantages that people have, and that is just totally, totally wrong. And in today's world, corporations can literally go out and buy a politician, and that is anything but what our forefathers talked about and the way our government should be run.
All right, cool. So right now, of that $600 billion, about $110 billion is being invested back into people like you, veterans, with veterans programs and all that goes along with that. Do you think that we've done a good job taking care of our veterans, or we haven't done a good enough job?
Absolutely not. There was no forethought going into the wars and the places we are in the Mideast, and we've had more mangled people come back from those, and more extensive wounds to the mind and to the body than we've ever had, and that will continue until we have a presence in our Congress that understands war and then understands limits. And that's why I'm all for the idea of a draft. Because when there's a draft going on, everybody has skin in the game. Right now, our Congress, I believe the stat is somewhere around 18% of our Congress folks, the Senate and Congress, have any kind of military background.
Yeah.
And as that continues to decline, there's less and less interest in, I don't care, they're over there, that doesn't bother me. there's not a true interest in the veterans that we should be looking at for today. Right now, today's veterans coming back sit around too long for a major overhaul on their bodies and major overhauls on their minds, and that is just unconscionable to me that could happen.
Okay. So is there any way we could fix the money, instead of allocating so much money towards the actual defense and start reinvesting that towards our veterans? What is the way that we readjust that so we're doing a better job of not spending so much on our policing the world and instead spending it on our own veterans?
Well, one of the things you do is you look at full cost of what it's going to be, and the costs of after-war costs weren't considered at all with what's happened, and our veterans are part of the after-war cost and their care for a lifetime for some of them who are wounded off the bat, and they come back and they've got not mortal but close to mortal wounds that they are going to be dealing with for the rest of their life. That has to be planned for, not an afterthought.
Okay. Are you familiar with sequestration? A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Have budget cuts and sequestration, in your opinion, have they caused any harm, or have they had any effect on you as a veteran, or how we go about handling the military?
Well, I think sequester has occurred because of our lack of focus and function of our Congress, and it's just another means to stop things when you don't get your way, and that's really bad. One of the things that I think would prevent sequestering, if we ever get back to, and things are so volatile right now, I don't know as we'll ever get back to Republicans and Democrats helping one another out or working towards the public good. Right now there's too many self-interests, and that's a lot of what has led towards sequester. And when you cut programs because we're going to cut this with an axe just because we said so, a lot of people suffer because of that.
And that's as far as what I wanted to go in military spending. I really appreciate that. And then my last question is, my teacher wanted me to ask about military contractors. Is that a viable option for the United States, or is that something that shouldn't even be considered?
Military contractors have been a huge problem for us, starting from the Dick Cheney times, where the military cook was taken away, and those kind of things were contracted out to Halliburton. The meals and everything else cost 2 or 3 or 4 times as much as they did for that military person preparing military designs and stuff, being part of the process. From the standpoint of contractors and Z, as they're called now, absolutely not. That's a huge mistake, because again, you have politicians playing with things that they shouldn't. It's harder to play with the military that we have today than it is to play with contractors that we have, and there's an awful lot of money that's wasted with contractors as opposed to some of the military that's generally more accountable for their actions.
Okay. Yeah, that's a common thing I've heard, is the not being accountable as far as military contractors go. Cool.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
And over in Iraq and Afghanistan, the Halliburton contractors were given contracts where if they broke the law, they weren't held accountable. And there were things like rapes, there were things like tons and tons of money stolen and stuff like that, and none of it were they accountable for when they got back to the U.S.
And so my final thought is, right now, like based on what you've told me, you'd consider that like there needs to be overhaul done as far as the interaction the Congress and the presidency have with the military and funding it. We need to have overhaul concerning it. Would that be correct?
I would totally agree with that. I would very much agree with that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Olesak. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.